Hello and welcome to a lesson on Joseph Haydn's quadrille, or quadrille if you'll excuse my terrible French pronunciation. It's currently on the MTP Piano Grade 1 listing and was an alternative piece on the ABRSM Piano Grade 1 listing 2019-20, so it would make an ideal own choice piece if you were taking the performance version of an ABRSM Grade 1 exam. It's a very useful piece to learn at an early age because it can start to teach about how to relate simple harmony to melody and help develop a very efficient way of learning music. A quadrille is a kind of dance that four couples do together. They stand in a square shape like the corners of a box. The word quad means four, just like in quadrilaterals, which is shapes with four sides, or quad bikes, which is bikes with four wheels. Here's a clip of some people dancing a quadrille.
You ever saw? Now gents to the center and back to your jeans. Now ladies to the center and you circle the lane. You circle forward and you don't get lost in the gent step in with the right hand crossed in front of your girl. Now the ladies turn in a Dixon whirling. What you're watching is a typical...
The composer Joseph Haydn wrote this piece around the year 1792, which is around the time when he first went to England. The version we are going to learn is slightly easier than the original version. It's just a middle section which has been transposed into C major. People aren't sure if Haydn originally wrote this piece for piano or orchestra, but it sounds great on the keyboard. This piece gives us a great chance to learn some really important things about music. It's based on only two chords, and the melody relates very simply to those two chords. So we're going to start by playing the C major scale and having a little improvise on the notes of C major just to get the feel of the key, which is all on the white notes. Next, we're going to make a chord by taking the first, third, and fifth notes of the scale. The lowest note of the chord is called the root note, and we name the chord after the root. So as the root is C, this is called the chord of C. And as we're playing in the key of C major, we could also call it chord 1, as it is the chord that is built on the first note, number 1 note of the scale. So next we're going to make a chord that begins on the 5th note of the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the 5th note is G, and so the root of the chord is going to be G. So G is the first note, and then we'll count up in odd numbered notes to find the other two notes of the chord. B and D, G, B and D, the chord of G, or we could call it chord 5 because it begins on the 5th note of the C major scale, and that's the key that we're in. So there are millions of songs you could make up using just these two chords. So if you practice moving between the C chord and the G chord a few times with your left hand, then start. I'm sure you can do better than I did, but just start making up melodies in the right hand which fit the notes of the chord at first, and then you can start to get a bit more adventurous. Moving in between the notes of the chord. So before we bring the lesson back around to Haydn's actual piece, there's one more thing we need to look at. So Haydn uses the C chord exactly as we've just used it when making up our own piece. We're still going to count G as the first note, and we're still going to add odd numbered notes, the third and the fifth. So we've got G as the root, B as the third, D as the fifth, but we're going to carry on in odd numbers and add the seventh note. So this chord is called G7 or G7th. So we have the C chord and the G7th down here. Just for this exercise, you can play the G7th with 2 fingers in each hand if that's easy for you to get around the notes. So let's practice going in between the C chord and the G7th a few times. What happens if you pause on the G7th? Some people think this sounds unfinished and makes you really want to play the C chord after it. So does it sound finished now, like a full stop on a sentence? So now we're looking through the left hand of the piece. The first bar of the left hand, C, E, G, repeated 3 times as equal crotchets. Same in the second bar. So I've actually made this study score available in the link below as well, if it's useful to have this the marked up in the transcript of this lesson. The third bar, we have a G, F and a D, which if you remember, G, F and D were notes that featured in the C7th chord. Then we're back to the C chord, so I've marked that in pink. Next line, more of the same. Rarely there we don't have a chord at the end. We have a single note, the C, the root of the C chord. And then the third line, it's the G7th, C, G, C, G, C. And last line, again, exactly the same as the second line. So, in general, you can also notice that whenever there is a G7th chord, the right hand always has B, D, G. Is that true in the second line? Yes, just with different articulations. Twice in the third line, and fourth line, same as the second line. The right hand pretty much always has notes that belong to the C chord. There's one exception at the beginning of the first, second and third line. There's a B in between the second and third C, which is a kind of decoration. You could have just written but it just makes it a little bit more interesting. So we're now going to look at each line or each phrase, which is roughly equivalent in this piece, one phrase at a time, and see if we can maybe even memorize the patterns of each one by studying how the notes of the melody fit with the notes of the chord. The first, second and fourth phrase are very, very similar to each other, and the third one's not that much different either, but there's really only about 2 and a bit phrases to actually learn, and then you've got the whole piece. So bar 1 starts with a G upbeat, and then it has a C in the right hand melody with each of the C chords, and we just have to remember that decoration in between the second and third C. I'm going to try and see if I can do that without looking at the music. No problem. So on to the second bar. So left hand is the same. The right hand has an E and a C, which are very expected notes that belong to the C chord. It has an E with the first chord and a C with the second, and they're joined legato. So I'm going to see if I can do that without the music. And also now see if I can put that together with the first bar. So far so good. So let's move on to the third bar. So we know it has this pattern, this G7th pattern, which you can just as easily think of really as it's basically on the C chord, but the lower two notes, the C and the E, move up to an F and a G. And the melody is made up of the notes of a G chord. You can just have your hand in a G chord position and play the middle note, the top note, and the root note, the third, the fifth, and the root. And they're all joined together legato. So now again, going to lose the music and see if I can remember all of that. And in bar 4, we're back to these 3 C chords. And we've got a C, an E, and a G. So not quite C, E, G as the simplest form of the chord would be, but C, E, and G, G going below the other 2 notes. And again, they've got a legato slur above them. So first, that bar from memory. And then maybe work backwards, bars 3 and 4 together. And then perhaps the whole thing. So the second line is exactly the same as the first line, except for 2 differences. In the third bar of the phrase, which is bar 7 of the whole piece, the last 2 notes are staccato, whereas in bar 3, the third bar of the first phrase, it's all 3 are legato together. And at the end of the phrase, the left hand just plays 1 chord, followed by the root note C, and the right note just has a single C, rather than... So without the music, those last 2 bars. And then see if you can go back and revise each bar until you can get all 8 together. So now on to the third phrase, bar 9. The left hand has that G7th pattern, and the right hand has the notes of the G chord in the same order as it always does. This time they're all staccato, and it's preceded by a melodic upbeat C. And then the next bar, C major in the left hand, and the notes of a C major chord in the normal ascending order, C, E, G in the right hand, and then back to basically exactly the same as bar 11 without the upbeat, and the phrase ends with the C chord with the root note C, so this is probably simpler than the other 2 phrases. So keep trying to study those patterns until you can remember them, and also be aware of them whilst you're actually playing them, thinking of the names of the chords and the order of the notes. Don't just let it become totally muscle memory yet. And the final phrase, as we've already discussed, is exactly the same as the second, although great composers never write the same music twice. So you can play the final phrase with more of a sense of an ending. like. So I hope that's of some help. As I say, this grounding in how to look for patterns between the melody and the harmony is absolutely vital when it comes to learning virtuoso music. So I think it's great to start instilling this understanding of the musical language at an early age as possible. I suspect this works best in companion with the study score, so I've put a link to how to order that through the Patreon. But essentially, I hope it's been of some use to somebody somewhere, and I'll do another one about another piece, and I hope that will be useful too. So see you then.